We've made this funding flexible, so provinces and ultimately schools can use it for what they need most, from hand sanitizer to remote learning. School safety is top of mind for all of us right now. No matter where they live, students must be safe in their classrooms. Teachers and staff must be safe on the job, and parents must be confident that they can get back to work.
The federal government is sending money to provinces and territories to help them safely reopen schools, $2 billion in fact, and it'll be doled out based on population. The money will go towards adapting classrooms, improving air ventilation, boosting sanitation, and buying protective equipment. Cases of COVID-19 have been rising in some provinces as parents count down to their children's return to school. Ahmed Hussen is the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. He joins us from Ottawa to talk more about this. Hi, Minister. Good to have you back on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So school is weeks, if not days away, depending on where you live in this country. Why did your government wait until now to deliver this money?
Well, this has to be seen in the context of the collaboration we've been having with provinces and territories with respect to the safe reopening and the recovery period. This is in the context of the $19 billion previously announced by our government to be transferred to provinces and territories as part of the Safe Restart Agreement. So this is in addition to that. Today's announcement is even more support, building on the work that provinces and territories have already been doing on the reopening. So we said, let's give the provinces even more resources to be able to do everything that they can and everything that is necessary to keep our kids safe.
I understand that. I take your point fully on the $19 billion and how well received it was by the province's minister. I guess my question is, there have been questions from parents about a safe return to school, about the nature of class sizes, questions towards the provinces. I understand it's their jurisdiction, but those questions have been present for months. Why wasn't this, announced when the $19 billion was, or weeks ago? Like, kids are going back to school right now as we speak.
Well, absolutely. And I must say that, of course, as you said, this is an area of clear provincial jurisdiction. And I want to recognize the hard work that provinces and territories have been engaged in this work to make sure that schools are opened in a way that is safe for students, for teachers, and give all the reassurance possible to parents. But what we are saying and what Canadians expect of us is to work together with provinces and territories to provide that extra support. Because we've heard very clearly from parents, from stakeholders, from our caucus, our Liberal MPs, who've told us that more needs to be done to assure and reassure teachers and parents. And that's exactly what we're doing. But again, we are trusting the provinces and territories by providing this additional support in a flexible manner so that they can do the work that they need to do to make sure that all the kids and the teachers can return to work and to return to school and trust that parents will know that their children are learning in a safe and healthy environment.
Respectfully, Minister, did you just start getting those questions from parents? Because they've been asking them for months.
No, we've been working, as you know, with provinces and territories. The Safe Restart is an example of that, the result of those negotiations and that dialogue and collaboration. And the meeting that the virtual meeting that the Prime Minister had with the First Ministers is the 17th during this pandemic, which shows you that the collaboration has been ongoing. This is an extra layer of support. It is federalism at work. It does not interfere with provincial jurisdiction. It provides support, that extra layer of assurance and support. And it is a response to, as I said, parents and members of parliament who've been advocating for this. And so we're responding positively, and we're making the funding flexible, as you've heard the Prime Minister say, so that provinces can respond in the way that makes sense to them in their local circumstances.
Let's talk about that money and the flexibility that you referenced. So the money comes in I just want to make sure our viewers know, it comes in two installments, basically, one this fall and then one later on. The only sort of string attached that I heard the Prime Minister talk about today was by the end of this year, provinces will have to show your government what they spent the money on in order to receive the second installment next fall. My question is around the conditions on the money. And in particular, especially in this province, what we've heard in Ontario, what we've heard lately is concern from parents around the size of classes, right? And why concerns directed towards the province about why they aren't hiring more teachers in order to ensure smaller class sizes. Why didn't your government predicate this money on conditions that provinces had to, for example, maintain a certain class size?
Well, again, we trust provinces to take the measures that they need to take. This is not just about class sizes, although class sizes is a big part of it. But Ontario, under this additional money, will receive $763 million. So, of course, we expect Ontario to give us an update on where that money is going to go to. But my understanding is that $763 million will not only go to make sure that there is spacing in the classrooms and hopefully get more space in order to space out people in a way that in a way that confirms the health advice, but also getting PPE, getting cleaning supplies, getting everything and anything necessary to make sure that teachers are safe, that kids are safe, and that parents are given the reassurance. I have 3 young boys myself. Our 10-year-old is going back next week to school. The other 2 young ones, we're still talking about it. This is a live conversation for so many parents across the country, including in my own household. So we have to make sure that we give that assurance to those parents. And those parents expect us to work with provinces and territories to make our federation work in the way that it was intended to be. So respect the provincial jurisdiction, but provide that extra support. And at the end of the day, also provide an accounting to Canadians on where that money went.
I understand respecting provincial jurisdiction, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is you're giving them, you're giving provinces a lot of money. I know that they're going to be, we've heard them, they're going to be touchy about their jurisdiction here, but there are valid, in very legitimate concerns coming from parents around whether or not the things that you just outlined will be accomplished. And I know the provinces have assured them that that will be the case, but I just don't, there was nothing explained to the Prime Minister by the Prime Minister today that would indicate that, that there was really conditions or any guarantee that this money will make it safer. I'm not saying the opposite will happen, but I just wonder why there weren't more specific strings attached and if it was just that provinces push back too much.
No, I think it's a question of recognizing that that the needs are varied and are dependent on the plans that the province have in place. But we have to be flexible in this funding because in some cases, some of the money will be, as you said, be used for adapted learning spaces. In other cases, there'll be more investments in air ventilation, improved air ventilation, hand sanitation, hygiene, PPE, personal protective equipment, other cleaning supplies. We have to leave that to the provinces and territories. We recognize the hard work that they've done so far, and we know that they'll engage in more work to reassure their constituencies, their parents and teachers, making sure that the environment is conducive to an environment that gives confidence to parents like myself. But at the end of the day, this extra $2 billion will make a big difference in their efforts to do exactly that. We've heard from parents, we've heard from members of parliament who are very much in touch with their communities, who are saying we need the federal government to also step up, and this is exactly what we're doing today.
So you mentioned your 3, I think you said you had 3 sons. Based on what you've heard from the provincial government in this province, in Ontario, do you feel safe sending them to school? Like, have your concerns been satisfied?
Again, every school board has their own plans. My 10-year-old, we are satisfied with the plan that has been communicated to our family by the school board. So we will be sending him to school next week. The other 2 younger boys, we're still having a conversation. I'm having a conversation with my wife on some of the issues that we have to consider. But it is a live conversation, and it is something that we are concerned about. I mean, every parent wants reassurance that their children will have the safest possible environment while they send them to school to try to get an education. So we are helping, we'll continue to help. We are understanding of provincial jurisdiction, but we also responded to stakeholders, to parents, to members of parliament who are connected to their communities by providing this funding and by making it flexible in recognition of the diversity of this country, in recognition of the different approaches and the different plans and the different timelines that provinces and territories will have right across Canada.
Yeah, and again, I take your point, and I'm not trying to belabor this one, but
Yes.
I understand the live conversation nature of it. I think when I talk to colleagues of mine or people who have kids in school, they're all wondering, why wasn't this stuff figured out earlier? We knew we were in a pandemic, and I know this isn't entirely the federal government's responsibility. They have the same questions of the province, and this money I know will be appreciated. I think the question continues to be for parents, why wasn't this plan? Why wasn't this money? Why wasn't it earlier?
Well, the plans have been ongoing. Provinces have been working on this. We have to recognize that. I mean, they have been trying to figure this out. There have been plans in place that are being executed. But again, the resources that are there are limited, and so we have to do what we can and use our spending power to help provinces execute on their already existing plans to help keep kids safe in an environment that is very difficult for parents to be reassured about. But hopefully, with this extra support, with the plans that are being executed, with the flexibilities that are being introduced with this additional money, we hope that that parents will have that reassurance to go back to send their kids back to school, and I know that this is a live conversation. This is something we're all figuring out together as a society, and I know that provinces are providing the leadership and the resources, and this is an extra layer of support. This is an extra layer of reassurance to both provinces and territories, but equally, if not more importantly, to parents themselves.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you, Minister Hussen. I appreciate your time this evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
We respect the Constitution, but we needed to find a way to be there for Canadians, and that's exactly what we've done.
The Prime Minister, when he spoke to me on Friday, the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "Doug, I understand this isn't my jurisdiction, but I just want to help." And we're grateful for that, and I want to thank the Prime Minister.
The fact is, it isn't a federal area of jurisdiction. This represents 3% of our education budget. So what we do with the federal money will simply supplement what we've already been planning on doing here with the 97% of our budget that comes from Manitoba taxpayers.
Some reaction there to the federal government's announcement today of $2 billion to help families feel safe sending their kids back to school across the country. Ontario's Doug Ford thrilled, Manitoba's Brian Pallister less so. Everyone's taking the money, though. Is the money about helping provinces or procuring some goodwill ahead of a federal confidence vote? Maybe a little of column A, a little of column B. Time for the power panel to pick in Toronto. Amanda Alvaro of Pomp and Circumstance joins us. Summa Strategies' Tim Powers is right here in Ottawa, as are Kathleen Monk of Earnscliffe Strategy Group and Sherelle Evelyn, managing editor of The Hill Times. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Great to see you. Amanda, let me ask you, how do you think this is perceived? Is it welcome from parents, I'm sure, who are, as you're among them, everyone's worried about this return to school, or at least, thinking about it to a certain degree? Or does it look like, okay, we're trying to win some support in a few weeks and this could have come a bit earlier? What do you think?
I think it may be a little bit of both, and I think it's certainly been characterized that way. But I think for any parent and people who have been around any parent of a school-age children, it's the topic that's dominating every conversation. And the anxiety is palpable. People know that, whether it's class sizes or you're worried about ventilation or you're worried about protective equipment, parents are just plain worried. So I think, both comments from the premiers were interesting and valid. It is a provincial jurisdiction. Most of these plans are already in place, and these funds will supplement what's already happening. But if you can imagine, for a province like Ontario, where it amounts to $763 million, perhaps some of those dollars go toward the ventilation systems and the PPE, and perhaps that allows the province to free up some dollars to bring down those class sizes. And I think that's the thing that parents are still waiting to hear. But to call it just a political gamemanship, well, that's just cynical.
So, Kathleen, I think, I'm not sure what the number you said is. I think my information is, and hopefully someone in the control room can correct me, I think it's like $389 million for Ontario. So they're spending $70 million for more teachers, $100 million to school boards to use as they see fit. So that could include teachers hiring, $30 million for PPE, and $50 million to respond to the second wave or prep for flu season. Then there's money for school bus driver retention, and then as well for cleaning and things like that. I mean, the big issue here in Ontario, which I'm sure a lot of our viewers are familiar with, was around hiring more teachers and class sizes, right? Because that was essentially at the beginning what there wasn't more money from for the provinces. So it looks like this will go towards that to a certain degree, Kathleen.
So chalk me up as one of the cynics, I guess. I mean, I would actually quote my good friend in Ontario NDP education critic Merritt Stiles, who had the line certainly of the day today, which was, when you show up 5 weeks late with your assignment, you don't get an A+. And I think that's the case, that the government, the Liberal government, can't be credited with this as fully as they would have been if they'd actually thought about talking about giving this $2 billion to the provinces maybe in June, or they could have even gone further back. To give you an example, I've already done my school shopping for my kids. We planned out a budget. We figured out what things we needed. We need new shoes. There are some choices and priorities that have to be made. Do you want the fancy new jacket, or do you just want to actually replace the broken backpack? Families need to make these choices. Guess what? So do school boards. They need to make these choices, and they needed to make them weeks ago to actually alleviate the exact anxiety that parents have been facing. I think this has a lot more to do, frankly. It's more of an election-style-like announcement. It's more dependent on the Liberal internal communication calendar than actually the needs of kids. This is basically a classic case, Vashi, of where photo ops are driving policy as opposed to people's needs, and in this case, kids' needs driving good policy.
So, Sherelle, help me out. I see it a couple of ways. I understand that viewpoint completely because, and I interviewed the minister in charge about this, and there certainly have been questions about this for months. I also see the point of view that, this was up to the provinces, right? Like, this is provincial jurisdiction, and there have been criticisms directed at them for being too late to the table as well. Sherelle, what do you think?
Yeah, I can definitely see that argument because, I mean, yes, the government could have said to the federal government could have said to the provinces, okay, we're going to give you money for K-12 education and, figure it out. Or they can say, come to us with your plan, and then we might be able to give you some assistance. And it seems as though if, what they are saying is the correct chronology of how this rolled out, is that they said, okay, the provinces have all set out their plans finally, because it was really only within the last few weeks in some provinces that you even had a real sense of what school boards were even expected to do. So yes, they could have had money that was kind of left dangling over them to reach for, and maybe that would have affected the plans that they made. But at the same time, if it's not the provinces, if it's not the federal jurisdiction, it's the province's responsibility, why would you be looking to the federal government to give them any money whatsoever?
Tim, and before I get you to weigh in, I just want to make sure, because I was confused and Amanda was right, and the people who populate my brain, thankfully, have explained it to me. And by that, I mean the producers of the show. So I thought it's $389 million they get now. Then they have to show the federal government what they spent it on in December, and then they get the rest of it, which in total would amount to $763 million. I want to make sure that we're accurate, that I am accurate here. So, Tim, how do you think it's perceived? What do you think the politics behind this is?
Well, Vashi, at least people populate your brain. Mine's just a vacant lot. So
No, mine would be vacant without them, was my point, yeah.
Look, of course, every government announcement is about politics, and this government's announcement is clearly political. It also happens to be helpful, albeit late. I mean, the thing I find sort of strange with this is, I think we talked about this maybe 6-8 weeks ago, even longer. You'll remember the provinces said when the government came down with, what was it, $14 billion at the time, that wasn't enough for what they needed to do. Why didn't they put this $2 billion upfront then, so that the provinces could use part of that money to address the needs that schools have? I mean, I remember talking to the head of the Newfoundland and Labrador Teachers Association in June, and he was floating an idea about, let's put money forward now so we can identify substitute teachers who we can hire so that we can have smaller class sizes. So yes, it's good the money's there. It should have been earlier. Probably the government will get some credit for this, but again, we'll see over the next number of weeks if any government gets any credit for this, for the investments that they're making, because the anxiety is so high out there among parents and children about what's going to happen over the next number of weeks. $2 billion may not get you the accolades you think it's going to get you if the start of school is a chaotic, hot mess.
Let me ask you, Amanda, about a target audience, though, and Kathleen might have something to say about this as well. Does this have anything to do with what's coming up at the end of September, and in particular, what the NDP has really been driving at with respect to more money for childcare more generally, but this kind of stuff? Is this like one small step to try and begin the process of securing their support towards the end of this month, do you think? Or is that way off base?
It might be, but I think that really what it has to do with is, I'm just getting surveys right now from the school board saying, is your son coming back to school or not? And that survey I got literally a half an hour ago. So school boards are trying to determine who's going to be in the classroom, who won't be in the classroom. And I think months down the road, things could look very different. Big numbers, though, they don't have the same resonance that they once had. A $2 billion announcement 2 years ago would have been the be all and end all of announcements.
Oh, now it's like a
penny. Today, we hear $2 billion and we're like, oh, chump change, $2 billion. So I don't know that this is about politics. I think it's about alleviating some anxiety. And most importantly, I think it's about getting the economy going by giving parents the confidence to send their kids back to school so that they can go back to work.
The question, I guess, Kathleen, is does it do that? And I just want you to weigh in quickly before I take a break on the idea of this being about securing some sort of progressive support towards the throne speech.
Yeah, and part of securing that support is ensuring that families and parents can get back into the workforce and they feel that their children are cared for and safe, right? And so because we are being faced with this she session, they want to get women back in the workforce, women and mothers and fathers need to make sure that their kids are safe. I think the thing that the point I'm trying to make, and Tim made it as well, just build on, is that when the federal government announced the Safe Start money for the provinces, I thought it was $19 billion. Sorry?
It was on July 16th, it was 19, and June it was 14,
Okay, so the girls are winning on the numbers. Okay, so, so on the 19th,
14 when it started.
But on the 19th, it added the two there and said, we want the provinces to use the specific amount of $2 billion to have smaller classrooms. Therefore, the boards could go hire new teachers, or try hiring an HVAC guy right now to work on a ventilation system. Do you know how hard that's going to be? So I just think that the money would have been more useful, and it would have alleviated a lot of anxiety for parents if it could have been addressed when they did the Safe Start announcement earlier this summer.